The pursuit of excellence. In every skill, every craft, and even just in the way we live our day to day, there are always people journeying on the long road of taking things to the next level. This attitude bodes well for a world like Pokemon, and generally just video games as a whole. While these are universes where you can always just have fun and enjoy yourself, the game of it all, and then the subsequent desire to win, can also exist like a mountain, taunting players standing before it to rise to the top and be the absolute best that they can be. We see this manifest in a number of ways across a huge variety of titles, and really the sky's the limit when it comes to video games being a proving ground for those looking to level up. It's why I think Pokemon so perfectly lends itself to this idea. These are games and worlds with so many different tests of greatness available. You can battle, you can collect, you can nurture, you can hunt. This is a universe with enough offerings for every trainer to be great in their very own way. As such, the worlds are populated with NPCs described by their chosen calling in life. The hikers love hiking, and they're great at it. They can usually be found hanging out in the rugged and mountainous areas that are good for it. The fishers love fishing, and they're also great at it. They're usually found at and around bodies of water, honing their craft. And the ace trainers are... ace trainers. Well, what does that exactly mean? Because, here's my conundrum. Obviously, ace trainers are tangentially good at Pokemon in some way. That's the thing that they do, and as we've established, there's not really any question why they would do that. It's all in the pursuit of excellence. They hang out in the later areas of game stories, wear cool clothes, fight with dynamic battle teams, and even sort of have an attitude about it sometimes. Nothing complicated, it's all quite very clear-cut. It's just that trainer classes are sort of like taxonomic classifications regarding one's hobbies or place in life. You know, they're very demonstrative. Like, this little guy is a school kid because he's a kid and he goes to school. This dashing fellow is a gym leader because he leads a gym and was certified by the Pokemon League. And so the question that I think we need to ask is simple. How do ace trainers get their title? And what exactly is the criteria for being considered an ace in this world? And while we're at it, what can be narrowed down as to what the title exactly means? That's right, folks, it's another Pokemon investigation, and we are going to pull out all the stops as we solve another one of the great mysteries plaguing the Pokemon world. As always, only the mainline games will be on the table for evidence, but everything is fair game for the eventual speculation. And one note for this one in particular is that prior to Gen 4, ace trainers were referred to as cool trainers, but they are definitely one and the same in terms of function, as later remakes of pre-Gen 4 titles change cool to ace on the same characters. And as such, we'll be discussing and looking at them interchangeably. So with all the pretense out of the way, grab your tracksuits and the best Pokemon you have access to, because we're going on a journey to discover the exact meaning of greatness. To get started here, we're going to need to fully integrate and dive deep into these trainers' current way of life if we want any chance at figuring things out. As such, I will be donning the appropriate outfit to completely blend in, specifically the HeartGold SoulSilver Ace Trainer style. I just love these guys in particular. Such a menacing aura radiates off of this pose. And now that I look the part, we're gonna have a lot more success figuring things out. Trust me on this one. Actually, in universe, ace trainers can usually be found congregating near the ends of game stories, with a huge amount of them found on Victory Road, Pokemon's staple endgame dungeon before the final bosses at the Pokemon League. This is obviously nowhere close to the full extent of their characterization, but I think physical positioning is a really important component of this group of people. It's the first facet of their identity that I like to look at because there's not really a home base or central theme for this group like there is for a majority of the other classes. So I think there's a lot to gain from trying to outline something like that as a baseline, even if it ends up being a mostly circumstantial one. On the front half of games, ace trainers are virtually nowhere to be found, and so there's a stark contrast with their distribution on Victory Road, where almost every NPC, if not all of them in some cases, are ace trainers. This might not mean too much if it were any other location, but there's essentially only one reason that anyone would hang out in this cave in any of the regions it appears in. Victory Road, not counting the role of the odd service worker or staffer, serves a singular purpose of being your final journey before the Pokemon League. And while the various league headquarters mechanically function like towns, that would be an incredibly generous descriptor for them. These are also singular places with a singular function, hosting the ultimate challenge for aspiring trainers, which altogether illuminates the first major piece of our search here. A big part of being an ace trainer is working towards challenging the Elite Four. It's conscious, ongoing work to conform to the world's idea of being the best. And this is consistent with the messaging of the characters themselves. They're gauging both your and their own skills right right before the big boss fights, and their positioning and title kind of poses a "are you ready for this?" question to us as players. It's not the most romantic thing in the world, but this seems to be one of the biggest underlying pieces involved in granting the title. Therefore, I think it would be helpful to think of Ace Trainer as something akin to a licensing or certification rather than just the usual trainer profile. To remain certified, so to speak, as an Ace Trainer, you need to keep up continuous and engaged work in the competitive sector of the Pokemon world. It definitely doesn't grant the title by itself, but I'd imagine that this is a key piece in keeping the title. If an Ace Trainer were to begin slouching on their duties, the title could theoretically be revoked. At least, that's sort of the picture that's being painted here. But so with that idea in mind, let's widen our lens a little bit here, because I think this is the perfect time to rope in the Ace Trainers that are found outside of Victory Road. The Pokemon League, the Elite Four, the Champion, these are the clinically described end goals of any competitor's journey. But the road towards these goals is an extremely long one, and we all know the grind doesn't stop just because you beat the Champion. No. Obviously not. Now you have to go hang out on the Sevi Islands and enjoy the best region in the series or whatever other post-game experience you prefer. I don't have a bias or anything. I want to circle back to the post-game Ace Trainers though, because I find the ones before Victory Road particularly illuminating on what exactly makes the title. The earliest you can find a normal Ace Trainer out in the wild in any title is right before Veilstone City in Gen 4, where these two are acting almost as final bosses at the end of the Route 215 gauntlet. Now unfortunately, because the gym order in Diamond and Pearl versus Platinum isn't exactly the same, we can't super pin this appearance to an exact badge count, but we can at least call it roughly halfway through the story. Gen 3's first Ace Trainers are found at a very similar position, showing up after the third gym and roughly orbiting the territory of the fourth. Not so overtly as guards for the next area, but still a very strong indicator you've entered a more advanced portion of the game. And I'm admittedly excluding special facilities when I say this, but this mid-game 4-ish badges start is very consistent across the entire series. On its face, it is a great piece of subtle world building to indicate to the player that things are getting more serious. But at this high frequency, it also seems to be our lower limit for becoming Ace Trainer certified. There's definitely some slight variance in this measure across games, but I would chalk this up to regional differences with the Pokemon League authorities of different regions. Johto's Ace Trainer cutoff is tied to being able to cross bodies of water with Surf, which is an activity that requires possession of 4 badges. In Unova, it's a little bit further and they start showing up after 5 badges. Maybe their league authority has a slightly higher standard. Kalos is a little bit easier, and then Alola is right in that cluster of the 3rd through 5th trials. This being the same case so many times leads me to believe that what we are looking at here is the bare minimum requirement for the title. Again, not the only requirement, but to be eligible to apply, so to speak. This is the baseline point that you need to hit depending on the region. And I'm even going to go a bit further with this, maybe to the point of reaching even. But to me, it does seem like Ace Trainer is an official, non-colloquial position appointed by the Pokemon League Authority. It is a recognition of a certain skill within aspiring trainers who have not yet reached the heights of something like leading a gym or contending with the Elite Four. Or perhaps they're working on something else entirely, like our trainers in the postgame. Think of Ace Trainer as something like a journeyman, a junior researcher, or an intern. Because in addition to those minimum credentials, they all seem to have this sort of purpose within the world too. And while more subtle than most, it boils down to relatively classical jobs and assignments that are inextricably linked to the title of Ace. Those ones we were just talking about, the infamous trainers right before Veilstone City, are a fantastic example of this idea, as they are very much positioned as the final hurdle you have to clear before finishing an extremely long stretch of game. The journey from Hardhome to Veilstone is not a pretty one, folks. Out of universe, and in terms of mechanical game design, this placement is extremely straightforward as the boss of this route, and de facto guardians of the next town. But in universe, that works just as well as a legitimate and flavored explanation for these characters' intentions, as it is demonstrably their actual job to test journeying trainers and act as a roadblock for those not quite ready for the next area. This is a near universal facet to the Ace Trainer existence, and something they often directly communicate in their dialogue, posing their battle challenges to the player as a test to see if they're ready to continue. Sometimes they perform this role inside of gyms, throughout major dungeons, or even before locations of more legendary status, like these two standing right before the opening to Tenobi Ruins on Seven Island. It's kind of a perfect system if you think about it, because while they do exist as roadblocks, that functionality exclusively applies to trainers trying to get to the next area. They're not going to bother workers or people who just live nearby, as the eyes meeting criteria only applies to prospective battles. And when paired with the often very tactical and pinch positioning, it can all be understood as another credential for being an active duty ace trainer. You're expected to test aspiring trainers and ensure that they are ready for what's to come. And so I feel like the only loose end here at this point is that researcher adjacent role I floated earlier. One side of that culminates in posing the test to other trainers, but it would be reductive to not try and hone in on the makings of the particular expertise that ace trainers demonstrate whenever you get into a battle with them. These battles perform the front-facing role we have described up until this point, but something also needs to be said for the rigorous training and specialization they have to do to get as far as they have. Becoming the champion is the vague, overarching goal that is always at least somewhat present in the background for a Pokemon competitor, but what we're able to see specifically in ace trainers is the myriad of sub-goals, side quests, and associated fields of interest along the way. There is a unique contrast present with a lot of the other trainer classes where we can observe individual ace trainers holding specific interests, like a type specialization or a certain team dynamic, which I think is really noteworthy, because when you get into a fight with someone like a bug catcher, you almost universally know what you're in for. It's time for a face-off against a bunch of bugs. This theming is more or less apparent depending on the class, but with ace trainers, there's a real variance to the point of never knowing what you're gonna get, and I think that that's really special. There are a few commonalities we can nail down first, however, and they may even be loosely central to the title getting awarded. Ace trainers often show more advanced battle strategy than the average Pokemon trainer, and end up feeling closer to gym leaders in their actual mechanical style. Now, I mean, it is Pokemon, after all, so it's nothing ridiculous in terms of complexity, but you are going to see these trainers attempt to use type advantages in their move choices, and sometimes swap Pokemon or use items. And definitely, this isn't very impressive to us as actual players, but in universe, this is a very notable thing and kind of a big deal. It puts them in a similar realm to the gym leaders, and so we can see that maybe one of the most on-paper indicators that a trainer is ace is through these qualities of simply being slightly better at Pokemon battles. They don't have the skills because of the title, they earned the title as a result of these skills. And from there, it really seems like the sky is the limit. With this baseline improvement to battle intelligence acting as their foundation, ace trainers are then able to explore a myriad of research fields where they can work on bettering themselves. Let's head over to the Petalburg gym in Hoenn, for instance. It's one of my favorite places for this kind of thing. I think this is a very quintessential gym experience, for one, because the player character has all the story attachment to it, but mainly because of how incredibly standard and focused it is. There isn't really a gimmick here like with the other gyms, and the facility is a very straightforward test of your skills as a trainer, but where there is, in my opinion, a ton of flavor is with the gym trainers you face before getting to the leader Norman. Every trainer in this gym besides him is an ace trainer, and all of them have a battle specialty that they emphasize in your challenge. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this? They're not just working on their craft while testing trainers. They're dedicating themselves to a special expertise and style of battle with a much sharper focus than your usual general studies. And it's a really cool expansion on the definition of ace trainer. They're becoming experts on specific battle styles, more than just being generally good at them. This girl is working on becoming a defensive expert alongside her resilient Wigglytuff, and this guy is trying to become a quick draw through speed mastery, and this guy is learning the art of disruption alongside his trusty Spinda. It all makes for a layer of depth that goes far beyond the simple, yeah, I'm pretty good, that being an ace trainer could stand for, and further props up that they're all working on their personal brand of expertise. Maybe it's not a hard requirement that you're working on something exactly like this to initially get certified, but I do imagine it's something of an expectation once you have the job, and you're expected to perform research like this that in some way pushes the boundaries of Pokemon battles and also develops a personal expertise. It's really fun for us as players and for this lore that they're establishing that you can run into type specialist ace trainers of a variety of different types. This is a trainer class that can offer you a battle with a dark type specialist just as easily as one with a water type specialist, and I think for me personally that's the neatest thing about this group. The individual specialization specializations are so prominently on display with a huge variety, and then we get treated to some real excitement and intrigue as a result of that. These are clearly your ace trainers working on becoming, or I dare say even surpassing, the gym leaders through the pursuit of type specialization. Again, I think there's a demonstration of something very personal here, and a testament to a very self-deterministic idea of greatness, as there are some ace trainers running around with monotype teams stronger than that region's actual gym leader of the type. Like my good pal Spencer always says, cool trainer Colby's team. Better than Misty's. Which is definitely sort of an odd thing to just repeat at random, I agree, but in this case he's definitely got a point. This random guy on Victory Road in Kanto has a team that is demonstrably better than the official water type master for the region, and that is kind of odd. Maybe he's got a vision of greatness that's far higher than just being a gym leader. I don't know. But what is clear is that he and all the other trainers like him are doing it to chase their own greatness. Being a monotype trainer kind of throws all the classical game sense about type advantages out the window, and even more so for mono-species trainers. But this is that secret sauce that makes them aces. They've picked a specific subfield of expertise and are dedicating themselves to mastering the craft, even if it would put them at a classical disadvantage. And I think this is something that would definitely extend beyond what we are actually privy to as passing investigators in universe, because we can only figure out so much of any individual NPC's story. Someone's whole deal is kind of blatantly in your face when they only battle with Pokemon from the Bulbasaur evolution line, but a more unsuspecting trainer with a traditionally balanced team might be harder to nail down in this way. It might be a certain team structure or training regimen. But now wait a minute, because look at this guy. Uh-oh, somebody call a YouTuber, because these NPCs are cheating. You're not supposed to have that move. This is an outrage. But no, for real, I think there's a fun little piece of potential world building going on here. Because these ace trainers' expertise could be in the form of getting these previously thought to be impossible moves onto their specific Pokemon. And through lots and lots of training, we're able to get a Lantern capable of using Earthquake, for instance. Plus I think it's way more fun and constructive in most cases to try and explain oddities like these with lore rather than metagaming. In the Pokemon Adventures manga, the chairman of the Kanto Pokemon fan club spends a huge amount of time getting his prized Rapidash and Fearow to learn the move Payday through sheer grit and dedicated training with both of them. But what I didn't know at the time I was reading it was that this was a speculative explanation for a distribution of the two Pokemon with the move, and I think it's an extremely plausible solution within the Pokemon world framework. And if anyone could do it in that framework, it's going to be these trainers who have dedicated their lives to pushing the limits of their personalized study, and I think we should appreciate all the subtleties that could possibly entail. But alright, I think that just about covers everything that goes into the title of Ace Trainers. When you really dig into it, this is a trainer class and societal distinction that means something much more than just vaguely good at Pokemon. And there's even a fair amount of evidence to dictate that this is an official position appointed by the regional Pokemon League authorities. This does seem to be an actual job in some ways, with specific roles and duties. But I would say the biggest component to it is that Ace Trainers actually have to want it, and show a dedicated aspiration to greatness. This isn't a position that a Pokemon trainer can just fall into with a certain amount of aptitude. You need to be constantly pushing towards something greater. But the beautiful part of that, what surrounds me by beauty even, is that there is no narrow scope for greatness in a world like Pokemon. Ace Trainers show us that you can become great focusing on a myriad of different things. There are a few entry-level licensing requirements, like having a few badges and testing traveling trainers, but the self-led research and personal growth is the important thing, and that can happen in whatever direction they decide to move as trainers. They can study their craft as gym trainers of a specific type, or set up improvised testing grounds along the routes, or work towards defeating the champion in righteous battle, or even just simply getting better at what they do. Because these are the makings of Pokemon's Ace Trainers, and this is what it means to pursue excellence. And that's another Pokemon investigation safely in the books. Really hope you enjoyed this one, folks. This was another obscure little Pokemon oddity that I found myself more and more fascinated by as I continued to go deeper with the question. And this one was also an idea originally from a comment as well. And so as always, they are much appreciated. I love keeping the conversation going after the credits have already rolled, so let me know what you thought. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it, because that's all I got for you this time. It's been fun. I'll see y'all next time. Droomish out.